While it may seem that every woman on your newsfeed has come out with her own Me Too story in the wake of the Harvey Weinstein scandal, some women have advice for other women as to how to avoid sexual harassment or sexual abuse, and that's to stop asking for it with the way that you dress. According to Representative Bernice Johnson, who is a Democrat in Texas, she said that she grew up in a time when it was as much the woman's responsibility as it was a man's. How you were dressed, what your behavior was. I'm from the old school that you can have behaviors that appear to be inviting. It can be interpreted as such. That's the responsibility, I think, of the female. She then goes on to say, I think we also need to start talking about the power that women have to control the situation. There's law enforcement. You can refuse to cooperate with that kind of behavior. I think that many times men get away with this because they are allowed to get away with it by the women. And this isn't the only woman that's come out with some rhetoric like this. In fact, if you remember last week, Big Bang Theory's Mayim Bialik wrote an op-ed for the New York Times. Now, I will say a disclaimer that she has apologized for it since. But in that op-ed, she writes, I have decided that my sexual self is best reserved for private situations with those I am most intimate with. I dress modestly. I don't act flirtatiously with men as a policy. And this was her going on to explain why she herself has not been sexually assaulted. And another woman who has also apologized profusely, Donna Karen, during an interview said, you look at everything all over the world today and how women are dressing and what they are asking by just presenting themselves the way they do. What are they asking for? Trouble. So before we jump into, I think, some of the specifics of these quotes and how messed up they are and how they illustrate how ingrained some of these power dynamics and sexist beliefs and victim blaming are in our society and in our culture, I would just like to say for all the women and for all the men out there, it does not matter how naked you are or how revealing you are dressed or how sexual you are. That is not providing consent to touch my body. That is not providing consent to abuse my body. That is not providing consent to make salacious comments about my body. And so for these women to perpetuate these old school beliefs that were effed up then and are effed up now is really disappointing. But it shows you how ingrained, even in women, these sorts of ideals and these sorts of notions can become and have become.
I mean, yes. The Eddie Redmayne Johnson, whatever her name is, Bernice Johnson.
Yes.
Not Eddie Redmayne, who's an actor.
Yes.
Really talented actor. Is essentially just saying, guys rape. You know they rape and it's in there, they do it. And if you don't want them to rape you, just wear a sweater. Like that's what she's saying. And that's messed up. What I think, like you try to wade through for the sensical thing and the nonsensical thing. So there's two different, there's like the way things are and handling that. And then there should be a, let's get to the way things should be. And whenever I hear the way that women I know deal with the way things are, it makes me really sad.
Yes.
My friend Olivia lived in San Francisco, and every day, like the way she would walk around in San Francisco, she'd have to wear a hoodie, sunglasses, and headphones, even though she wasn't listening to anything.
Yeah.
So she could pretend not to hear it.
But you also have to be self-aware in case someone does try to attack you.
You have to have your headphones down because you have to be listening for what's going on around you. I mean, when you think about the cognitive resources that you use on a daily basis as a woman to avoid any sort of sexual harassment, any sort of sexual assault, it is absurd. Like I could walk you through my day. Like I didn't go for a run this morning outside because it got light later in the day. You know what I mean? It's like, yes, I'm taking that protective measure because that's the reality of the world that we live in. But if God forbid something was gonna happen while I was on a run, for anybody to say, well, you shouldn't have run in the dark, like F you. Like I should be able to do that. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do that. And I made the choice not to do that. But then like, there's not a single day that like I've parked not in the parking lot of our studio. I've parked around the block or something like that. Every single time I've parked around the block, I've been harassed without fail. Without fail.
My wife doesn't go to the beach alone. She just doesn't because she can't. Just because of, and it's like I don't know, it's not even like it's connected with like necessarily with like the desire of a guy to have sex with her. It's just this weird presumption that you just can, that you can just yell at her. I don't like it. There's also this thing about like, a lot of folks have said like, you don't need a daughter to say like, oh, I have a daughter, so now I can speak with it. But there are folks who go after that person. My response is, I don't care how you got there. I don't care if it took having a daughter. I don't care if it took having a wife.
Right.
It shouldn't take having a daughter.
Right. You should just be humans.
But just get there.
Yeah.
Let's all get there. Eddie, Representative Johnson, get there.
Yeah, and I just really quick, I just want to talk about a few things within her statement. Talking about law enforcement, there's a ton of reasons why women don't go to law enforcement, because they're oftentimes not believed, they're oftentimes intimidated, they're oftentimes fearful of retaliation. You can refuse to cooperate with that kind of behavior. Yeah, of course you can refuse to cooperate, but if you listen to the Harvey Weinstein tape, you can hear him coercing, you can hear her trying to refuse. Also, there's this thing called rape where people force themselves upon you. And so even if you're refusing to cooperate, it still can happen to you.
Sure, and men have found myriad ways to sexually harass women that don't kind of fit into this box of what we understand as rape, right? With the Weinstein case in terms of like masturbating in the room while they're, you know what I mean? So there are a number of ways in which you can assault my personhood that don't, fit into this framework of what we understand as rape, and that's why they're having a hard time prosecuting a lot of these cases because we have a narrow definition of what sexual assault is. And just to the earlier point, I think women already understand the undue burden of like self-protection. Yeah. So I think these op-eds from Miriam and this statement from, Bernice is just problematic and very much disconnected from a progressive gender politic. Miriam is interesting because we see that this generational Mayim blossom, because we see this generational detachment, right? So Bernice is 50s, and here we are in this modern time, and she's kind of espousing some of the same beliefs that this woman a generation before her. It's the same argument.
Yeah. Well, and I think some of that, she goes into the article, she goes in the op-ed that she learned that from her parents. And I do think that comes from the generation prior. I remember I was on a field trip when I was in 8th grade, and I was on a field trip with my class, and this man came and groped me. And I told the teacher, because I was terrified as a 13-year-old, and she was like, well, you are wearing shorts. That's what I was told as an 8th grader, that I was wearing, oh, well, you decided to wear shorts. Like, no, that's not what we should be telling young girls. That is so beyond messed up, and we need to move past that as a society.
Sure. We really shift the messaging to what boys need to learn, what men need to learn about women's bodies and their access to women's bodies, so that women aren't consistently problematized for just being, for just existing and making choices.
Yeah, that's what she's saying is like, oh, you can refuse to cooperate. It's like, no, like I go about my day, I'm not doing anything. I'm consistently sexually harassed on Twitter and on my Instagram. I'm not cooperating with that.
Right, you don't even
I'm minding my own business.
Yeah, you don't even have to physically be in the space to be sexualized, right? So again, this is a nuanced conversation that we need to nuance our thoughts about how we approach it, because it's ridiculous, this arcane notion that, my skirt was too short, so Bill came on to me. It's like, that's not, wholly how sexual harassment and assault operates.
Yeah, people are assaulted in short skirts and they're assaulted in ski suits. Unfortunately, that's just how it happens.
If you like this clip of the Young Turks, there's a whole live 2-hour show, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern every day, and you can download it or stream it and watch it without ads if you become a member. tytnetwork.com/join.